Hello, everybody. Welcome to Transmission here on FreightWaves TV. My name is Sebastian Blanco. Over there is my co-host, Grace Sharkey. Grace, tell us how you're doing today.
I am doing great. This last week we had our owner operator summit, so that was really fun to see. Especially, here in Michigan, we got a ton of auto haulers, so it's nice to see that side of the industry get a little shine. But other than that, it's been a great week so far for me. How about you, Sebastian?
I'm still kind of riding high on some of the electric vehicle stuff that's come out recently. It feels like there's just been a really big push from a lot of different companies, a lot of different vehicles starting. I mean, the F-150 Lightning being a big deal. We talked about Toyota last week. I was down in Texas to see the BZX4 concept, which is nothing at this point other than just sort of a promise they're going to do it. The new Ford Maverick, which is a hybrid, not an all-electric, but they're talking about an all-electric version, like smaller trucks. There's just a lot happening with EVs, and that's, for me, that's always exciting to see. But we have someone who's going to tell us a lot more about some of the nitty-gritty, that goes into making these EVs, and we will get to that right after a word from our sponsor.
When you switch to AIT Worldwide Logistics for automotive shipping, you're partnering with a team of logistics professionals in Asia, Europe, and North America who develop customized supply chain solutions that are just as unique as your business, whether it's trans-border hotshot trucking, express ocean service, or an exclusive air charter. AIT has the expertise, technology, and carrier connections to achieve your production goals every time. Check out their link in the show notes.
Okay, so today, as promised, a very exciting guest is Ellen Hughes-Cromwell, the Senior Resident Fellow at Third Way and the former Chief Global Economist at Ford Motor Company. Ellen, those are pretty good credentials. Welcome to the show. How are you today?
I'm doing great. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. When I saw the release that Third Way put out, I guess this was a few weeks ago now, I just noticed it instantly. That was something that we wanted to talk about on the show. So since not everyone has read it, before we get into sort of our questions, what can you tell us about what Third Way just released as far as electric vehicle production in the United States? Because it's more than just a set of numbers. It's a cool tool.
Yes, we actually developed a series of maps that visually show where automotive plants are located, and also call-out boxes on the map that tell you how many jobs are at that plant and what products are being produced at that plant. It also highlights the electric vehicle assembly plants that either have electric vehicles that are being produced today or are in the product planning phase, and will be produced by 2025 at those locations. Other details, but high level, these maps I think are quite impactful and help a lot of, hopefully, your viewers out there see what is happening on the ground.
Definitely, and honestly, everyone at FreightWaves, we love data sources here. We love visual components to our articles to really drive the message that we're trying to give to our readers. And this was one of my favorite things about the article was just the mapping portion of it and the ability to play around in different areas of the United States and really see how impactful these EV production areas are for the communities, right? And just how intertwined a lot of the Midwest and Louisville, Kentucky area is in regards to production. So I really enjoyed the article and just being able to play around with the mapping through Tableau that you guys put together. And for all of our listeners, I will be sharing that on social media as well. So make sure you guys get a chance to read it because it's very in-depth and very impactful.
And that's at the Third Way website, which, Ellen, can you tell us just briefly what's a good way for people to find it, either by search or the URL?
Yeah, you can Google my name and Third Way. The URL for our website is thirdway.org. And this mapping memo is on our front page right now. Either way, you'll find it pretty easily. It's getting a lot of hits, And I think, there's so many people that are psyched about what's happening on electric vehicles, and they're just going out there and grabbing any information they can get. This really gives them a sense of, hey, where are we in the U.S.? How far have we gotten in terms of this trend toward electric vehicles?
And it seems like one of the main findings is that there is some reason to be concerned. I mean, obviously, when we look at the electric vehicle market writ large, Europe is a big market, China is a huge market, and the U.S. is in there. They're in the top three, but the other two major markets seem to be really pushing EVs a little harder than we are here. What from a production standpoint, based on the data that you guys put together for this map, what can you tell us about how the U.S. is sort of winning and losing the electric vehicle manufacturing race? Because it seems like there's reasons to be excited and reasons to look at other areas and think, oh, that's another way to do it.
Yes, I think that we are way behind. There is no question. The data kind of just pop out and tell you that pretty directly. We have about 50 assembly plants in the U.S., and less than half have some sort of electric vehicle product either today or by 2025. But the volume of those electric vehicles made at those plants is still very low compared to the gasoline-powered engine vehicles that they're pumping out at those plants. It's a small fraction of what they're planning to produce at those plants. It sounds like a lot, less than, a little under half of all assembly plants, but then when you look at the volume, you will quickly see that, well, yes, they have some. And, while we all love the Ford Lightning that was announced, the volume for that vehicle is relatively low compared to the traditional gasoline powered F-150s. I hope that will switch and flip over time, and really that's one of the messages here, is that we have a start, but we're way behind when you compare where we are to Europe and China. And that is a red flag. We've got to really change our appetite here.
Just a quick little side note there. I discovered this week that, speaking of Ford and electric vehicles specifically, so far in 2021, Ford has built more all-electric Mustang Mach-E's than they have gas-powered Mustangs. Now, they've sold like 3 times as many gas-powered ones in the U.S. as EVs, so the sales are different. But as far as production goes, so far for the first 5 months of the year, there's a few thousand more all-electric Mustangs that have been built. And there's a lot of reasons for that, whether it's the silicon chip shortage that's hampering production of the gas models, and they're being produced in different areas, the gas ones in Michigan, the electric ones down in Mexico. But in some cases, you're at least seeing an EV take the lead against a gas-powered version of that model. But to get back to some of the data that you talked about Ford a little bit, but by looking at your map, looking at the data, what companies are you seeing setting themselves up to really make a lot of EVs here, take some leadership, and which ones are going to be relying either on importing the whole vehicles or a lot of components for their domestic manufacturer?
As you know, Sebastian and Grace, we have a whole kind of group of solely battery electric vehicle companies like Tesla, like Rivian, hopefully Lordstown Motors, Arrival. We do have those exclusive types of producers out there, and I would expect that their business is going to flourish. And just coming back to your point about the Mach-E, to me, that's, as an economist, I say, that's a little bit of a signal. If people are choosing that vehicle, it means that the package is super enticing. And plus, with the tax credit, it's a very attractive price point. And I think that that's another reason why, oh my God, I think we're behind on the production side, because demand is really going to I think, flourish. When people start to drive these vehicles, they're going to realize, oh my God, this is so much better than what I had. And so it's a little bit of that tango between, the demand pull side and what we're ready to produce. Having said that, the legacy automakers are making progress. Certainly GM has invested significant CapEx around Detroit Hamtramck, converting that to an all battery electric vehicle plant. And they've identified other so-called factory zero or battery electric vehicle plants that they're going to be retooling in the next couple of years. Things are moving in that direction. It's just one of the points I want to make to you and your audience is we've got to move faster, and it really makes sense that we have policies that help support that transformation. Otherwise, we're going to be lost in the dust of a lot of imports coming in to satisfy that growing demand.
One of the most impactful parts for me personally within your article was touching on the past cycles that we've gone through. And both Sebastian and I are in Michigan. I have a lot of family around Detroit, from Detroit, and it was great that you touched on the fact that this policy is important for the communities that really fuel this change in manufacturing. From what you've seen, what areas and what communities are going to really win from this transfer to electric vehicles, and what communities are you more concerned about in terms of that switch?
I do think that the automotive manufacturers are going to begin to develop more accelerated plans to convert existing brownfield, existing plants over to battery electric vehicle production. You may have seen too the announcement that Ford made about the Van Dyke transmission plant, converting that to make electric vehicle parts. And hopefully that's what we'll start to see, more and more announcements, so that we use existing great workers that we have across the state of Michigan and Ohio and Kentucky. We have these incredibly trained automotive workers in all different areas that can certainly, convert and make electric vehicles. They can make electric motors, inverters, battery packs. There is no reason that our great American workers can't fill that, part of the transformation. And not only that, one of the things I talked about in the article is that, a lot of people don't realize when you go into an automotive community, like go to Normal, Illinois today, where Rivian is going to start producing, all of a sudden it multiplies other jobs in the community. And, they're having a bit of a mini boom in Normal, Illinois right now because people are buying, housing. Rivian's partnering with the community college and starting to stand up new programs so that, they can train new workers. It just is kind of the gift that keeps on giving in automotive because, as you know, there are over 4 million jobs in the automotive sector directly. So can't you imagine these communities who will really benefit? And, we can't do what we did back in the 70s and 80s where we had oil price shocks. We didn't really transition to make cheaper cars, gas efficient cars. We had a flotilla of imports that came in. We lost market share. We lost a significant number of good paying manufacturing jobs. We can't make that same mistake again. This technology is game changing. We have to be a global leader in this. And there's only one way to be a global leader. You can't do it offshore. You've got to build where you sell and grow up that knowledge base around this new electrified technology.
Well, that's something that we saw with Hyundai's recent announcement that they were going to spend, I believe, $7 billion, and I forget, over the next however many years, getting ready to build more electric vehicles here in the U.S., everything from design to manufacturing. And I know that when you work on a data set as large as what you did for your interactive mapping there, you kind of have to choose a stop point where you stop collecting data so you can process it all to present it. Is this something that will be updated as more companies make announcements, as things change in the next few years? I know you said this is looking out to 2025, but I mean EVs, it's because it's such a long time to get to them. Some of things are already talking 2030, 2035, 2050. So is this a resource people will be able to use and it'll keep being updated?
Yeah, we absolutely want to keep it live, and we're looking at, what sort of tempo we would be feathering in a lot of these updates. We did actually make some adjustments based on Geely's announcement around Charleston, and we're getting ready to feather in some others. It's a very dynamic environment right now. So, as data geeks, we can't just sit still and say, okay, this Tableau map is fine. Things get outdated so quickly because of what's really changing in the industry pretty rapidly.
No, you're good. Yeah, as a fellow data geek, I think that's one of my favorite things, is to really dive into, okay, like how often is this updated? Where are you sourcing this material? So I like that you guys are going to continue to keep your eye on that, because it is a really great tool, and I'd love to see how it just transitions through these new announcements. I think one thing in particular I'm interested in is the materials and raw materials needed for EV. And it sounds like you really do want to try to get this here domestically as much as possible. Can we find most of these raw materials here in North America? Is that something that is possible for the full domestic U.S. auto manufacturers?
Grace, I'm so glad you asked about that, because yesterday the White House issued a report on the supply chain review of several industries, two of which are critical for electrified transportation: batteries and these minerals and raw materials. And in both of those reviews, they indicated why and how it would be critical for the United States to stand up viable and leading industries in manufacturing in mining as well, of that in the U.S. It really highlighted why it's important that we have a domestic supply chain. These are critical industries. They also have strategic value for the United States, and they offer up global leadership that we can then go out and sell to other parts of the world over an extended period of time. It actually, gives you a lot of confidence around, the idea that these industries have to be resilient. We can't just have a top hat on an electric vehicle, but not really develop and supply domestically the, heart and soul of these vehicles. That a lot of the technology that goes into it is going to continue to change. Think about solid state batteries. If we don't domestically source and have an understanding and the ability to supply out batteries and the minerals and raw materials going into it, my goodness, how can we make the next tech advance to solid state? We need to have that domestic capability. And so this report does provide a solid evidence base of why these supply chains are critical and something that we absolutely have to have here in the United States. No question about it. We can't be relying on other countries for that supply chain.
I know that when it comes to selling an electric vehicle, and this is something I've been paying attention to for over 15 years now, so there are definitely people who are very excited. There are definitely people who are holdouts. Things like the Lightning truck open the electric vehicle options to a different segment of the population. Some of them were already interested in a Rivian or whatever, and now they see a similar, truck coming from a brand that they've known for a long time. On the manufacturing side, on the supply chain side, do you see any similar hesitancy about the shift to EVs, or are these communities where they're making big announcements about an electric vehicle plant or an adjustment to change what they build at that particular factory? Is that sometimes met with hesitancy, or is that much more met with excitement because it shows a big investment into that community and that factory, even if people themselves might not be buying the EVs today?
Sebastian, that's a very good question, and the answer is highly mixed. If, for example, you're a very large tier one supplier to the global automotive companies that are located here in the US, you likely have access to capital markets to have enough money or cash flow from your business to plan strategically for the future. Those types of large suppliers have plenty of resources and the ability, and they likely see that the industry is transitioning to electrified. They're making investments today for that future. In contrast, if you're a smaller so-called tier 2 or tier 3 supplier, where you have more limited resources, or you don't really see that the industry is really moving in the direction of electric vehicles, you may be more hesitant. Or you might see a policy as highly variable. One minute it looks like the government wants to move toward electric vehicles, and then they say, well, do they really? They're not really supporting it. And I think some of those hesitancies, as well as scarcer resources for the smaller suppliers, mean that they will be more adversely impacted, especially if they're supplying a narrow group of supply chain products or components into, let's say, a gasoline-powered engine or transmission. So there, I think there's some vulnerability, and we absolutely have to help those suppliers transition.
All right. Well, that has given us a lot to think about. I've been paying so much attention to the cars themselves that when you really dig into where they come from, how they're made, it gives you a nicer, deeper picture of the system that we're both living in and also watching change, because we all know these vehicles are coming, but the how and the why and the where and the exactly how everything plays out is where the interest is. And I really appreciate the maps and the data that FreightWaves put together. So Ellen Hughes-Cromwell, thank you very much for joining us today. Once again, she is a senior resident fellow at FreightWaves and used to be a chief global economist at Ford Motor Company. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for having me. Take care.